The 17th day of August it is. Good morning and welcome to KBC News Check, and today we will be tackling a variety of issues. But before then, this show is specifically designed to ensure that you are kept afloat on the latest happening in the country, and perhaps to touch just a few of some of the things we expect today. You do remember the two Kianjokoma brothers in the Embu County, number 14. The police officers who are held in connection to that murder are expected in court today. That is after the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nudin Haji, approved prosecution for the officer. So that is something that we will be keeping our eyes peeled. And of course, you do know that the political drumbeats are slowly but surely gaining pace and sound. The One Kenya Alliance are currently meeting in Naivasha, and we expect them, of course, to issue a statement. We have our team on the ground to ensure that you are also kept afloat on the latest happening in the political world. My name is Ben Troy Njue. Welcome. In the first hour, we will be discussing matters learning, and not just learning, e-learning, and when it comes, and especially to examinations. And on the second hour, we will be having a bigger heart. How are we dealing with the vulnerable groups? Because the COVID-19 pandemic has not made it any easier for each and everyone. But you do remember, Kenyans for Kenyans. Kenyans always have a big heart, and we will be having someone also who has and have been having a big heart for years now, and he'll be telling us some of the efforts that he is doing to ensure that he alleviates the suffering of these groups. That is basically what we'll be tackling today, and of course what will be happening in the country. We'll be making sure that you are in the know. So welcome. So education is one of the key pillars in any economy or any country, but the COVID-19 pandemic did not spare that as well. So other university, or many university, resulted into offering e-learning to ensure that learning continues. And joining me on set now, we have the Vice Chancellor of the Management University of Africa, mostly or commonly known as MUA, Professor Washington Okeyo. Karibu sana, Prof.
Thank you very much.
And perhaps to kick us off, kindly something little about MUA and what you've been able to do to perhaps be afloat in the COVID-19 pandemic era.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to give a big thank you to KBC for giving us this opportunity to come here as MUA, specifically myself, as the Vice Chancellor of the university, to talk a little bit about the university and also what we do at the university. As you have said rightly, my name is Professor Washington Okeyo. I'm an Associate Professor of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I'm the Vice Chancellor of the Management University of Africa. Management University of Africa came into being over 11 years ago and has been focusing in the areas of leadership and management, and also innovation and entrepreneurship for those many years. Management University of Africa was started by the Kenya Institute of Management, a well-known membership organization in this country.
The famous KIM.
The famous KIM, exactly, also known as KIM. Yeah, and it's still there and has quite a number of presence in literally all the towns. KIM has got a number of presence in all the towns in this country, ranging from Nairobi, of course, Mombasa, Kisumu, and several others. And apart from membership, KIM also offers training and academic education up to diploma level in various fields, including the fields of management, leadership, marketing, and other areas. So KIM is basically the sponsor of our university, the Management University of Africa. Now, in terms of academic programs, the Management University of Africa, we have programs at various levels. We have programs at certificate level, at diploma level, at degree level, that is undergraduate, at master's level, and also at PhD level. Our PhD programs, we have PhD in management and leadership. We also have PhD in business administration. At master's level, we have master's programs in areas like management and leadership, also BCom, sorry, not BCom, but business administration and development studies. And similarly, we have undergraduate programs in the three areas, that is management and leadership, Bachelor of Commerce, and also Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies. So the university has two campuses. We have our main campus, which we recently developed in Kajiado County, in a place called Kisaju. And we also have a sister campus here in Nairobi, in South Sea. Now, the university admits all students from all levels, but we categorize them into two. We have the government-sponsored students who are placed into our university by the government of Kenya. And this is important. The government of Kenya, through the agency that is charged with the responsibility of placing students to universities, that is KUCCPS, or famously known as COOPS, today has released from 6:30 in the morning the placements, the student placements, and how they have been placed into various universities. So I want to urge the students who have been placed in various universities, particularly in our university, the Management University of Africa, to watch out. We are going to reach out to you students so that we can tell you where we are and how to get to us. So that come September, when you're supposed to be joining the university, then we shall have all the information. So that is the first category of our students. Then the second category is the self-sponsored students. These are students who pay their own fees, and either through their guardians, through themselves, or through the parents. So those are the categories of students that we have. In terms of learning modes, the university has, and we are going to discuss a little bit about how the specific areas that we teach our students through. But we have a number of learning modes. We have the face-to-face mode. Of course, since the COVID-19 eased a little bit, and the Ministry of Education and the government opened up the learning back to face-to-face. We are back to that. But in addition, we also have the online distance and e-learning mode, which we call ODEL, which is also very famous with our students. And ODEL system is where students learn away from the campuses, but they are in direct touch with the university through the lecturers and other facilitators who facilitate them through learning. We also have the online learning, where students are taught through online means like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, and other means. So the university basically is well prepared and has got all the facilities that the students require to be able to gain the knowledge that they would wish to gain in any area or in any field.
Indeed. Thank you for that comprehensive start. And it's a good thing you've talked about the enrollment beginning today in the morning, right? So what extent has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your institution, and especially when it comes to student enrollment that we're talking about, and of course on placement of programs?
Thank you very much, Yue, for that question. Now, the COVID-19, when it struck last year in March, it struck in a very unexpected way. Of course, it is an external force. It didn't warn anybody that it was coming. And as a result of that, the government took the necessary steps to contain the spread at that time. One of the steps that the government took was to close all the universities and stop learning, at least for some time. Now, this found when our university and other universities in general were in the middle of instructing the students and preparing them for the examinations of that semester. So we had to move very fast as a university. although it affected the learning process, our movement to restore the situation back to normalcy or close to normalcy was in the area of looking at alternative means of how we could continue educating and teaching our students. And this meant that we had to be very innovative. We had to look for online systems, through which we could teach our students. We had to look for, other means like equipment, like hardware, like, additional basic equipment to enable us, teach our students so that they didn't miss. Obviously, when COVID-19 struck, like I said earlier, it caught everybody unawares. And the academic and learning institutions were literally the most affected because once the programs are not being taught and being delivered the way they are expected to be, then obviously the students get affected, the parents get affected, the teachers get affected, the lecturers get affected, and the whole education fraternity gets affected. And one of the effects was that students, first of all, were very skeptical about the new way of learning. Although online learning was there in the past, and even this, other online distance learning was there in the past, but it wasn't the norm. A lot of students preferred, obviously for obvious reasons, the face-to-face learning because it is more interactive, it is more, personal, and so on and so forth. And this wasn't to be. So as a result of that, the students were taken aback, and a lot of students could not continue immediately. And this affected the presence and registration numbers and enrollment numbers, in the universities, and in particular our university. However, the situation kind of moved to a little bit of normalcy as people began to realize that COVID-19 wasn't going to go away any sooner. That it was going to stay. So the students who had not postponed their registration started coming back the semester after the COVID-19, particularly in the third semester of last year. So they started coming back. And since that time, we have seen an increase in student enrollment. Numbers have gone up, almost back to normalcy. Quite a number of students are still used to face-to-face, and a number of them are coming to the university physically. However, there are some of them who now prefer, instead of coming to the university physically, and of course the advantages of online learning, they prefer to do the online learning instead of coming to the university physically.
And still on the same,
yes.
While you're at it, we've seen some universities, case in point, Nairobi University has scaled down some of operations to ensure that they conform because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Have you also resorted to the same?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. The situation in MUA, our university, is slightly different. In fact, when people ask me that question, and I've been asked that question before, my response is the University of Nairobi, those bigger universities, are actually now following the model that our university has been using all along.
How is that?
Our model has been based on a very lean sort of structure, almost flat structure. We have what is recommended by the Commission, and by the way, all the universities in Kenya are regulated by the Commission for University Education. So in terms of staffing ratios, in terms of academic offices, in terms of programs, all these are accredited and approved by the Commission for University Education. But then you can scale them down to as lean as possible, as long as you don't compromise on the standards, of delivering the academic programs. So we've had a very lean system, which we have operated on. And this is what the University of Nairobi is now adopting. For example, the number of vice chancellors, not vice chancellors, but the deputy vice chancellors. University of Nairobi, I think, had about 4 or so. We have 1, that is vice chancellor in charge of academics and student affairs. And the other functions are done by people not at the vice chancellor, at the deputy vice chancellor's level. And what that means is that we save quite a bit in terms of costs.
Yes.
And in terms of decision making, it is very, very fast because you are dealing with a very, very lean staff.
And still on the same, I do remember University of Nairobi students had staged a protest because of hiked fees. Have you hiked your fees at MUA?
No, we have not increased our fees as at MUA. Our fees is still exactly the same. Our fee structure is what we have been, our students have been paying for the last several years now. We have actually not changed, and we have had no reason to change because there are ways of reducing the costs of running a university. So we reduce the costs in terms of looking for services, for example, the goods that we purchase for supporting our students. We go on a tender basis, and we find out who is the cheapest provider in the market, and that is what we go by. So, and that means that we save a lot in terms of costs, since we only go for the cheapest, and but then the most the most effective.
Yeah, e-learning and of course when it comes to examining is the same thing, but we do know that when examinations are conducted face-to-face, a lot of people tend to believe there is a lot of integrity in those examinations. But now we are talking about electronic examinations. How do you, or what measures have you put in place to ensure that there is still integrity and trust in the examination process?
Yes, the examination process is a long process, and when we talk about examinations, a lot of people seem to think about the final exams that the students do when they sit in 3-hour exam or 2-hour exam, and then that is what people look at it as. But the examination process starts way earlier in terms of when we are preparing the students. There is the soft part where we talk to the students about exam integrity. So that is very, very key. So whether examination is being done online or is being done through face-to-face, the students must be taught to realize that integrity is a problem. In academics, we call it, sometimes we call it plagiarism, depending on what level that you are talking about, exam theft. And we teach our students that if you plagiarize, for example, somebody else's work, or you produce somebody else's work under the guise that it is your work, that is what we call plagiarism, then there is a cost to it. The certificate that you'll get at the end of the day, if it is a degree certificate, if it is a diploma certificate, can be withdrawn if it is actually found that you compromised the examination process. So that is the training that we take our staff, our students through. But in terms of now the process of examining students, what do? We ensure that the questions that we set for examination, first of all, are questions which are which can be answered even if you had a book on that same topic. You cannot get an answer from that book directly.
Really?
Yes. How do we do this? We do this by making sure that the questions that we have are not necessarily recall questions. They are what we call recall questions, where you can ask students to recall what he was taught.
Yes.
And that is very easy.
Like we do in KCP and KCSE.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes. Those are recall questions. At university level, the way we test, and this, of course, advances by the level of degree from bachelor's to master's to PhD.
Yes.
We set questions which are more or less application, more or less creation, more or less, we call it on the right-hand side of the Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is a system which basically guides on how to set examination questions or how to examine a student. So that in the beginning, or the Bloom's taxonomy on the left-hand side, you have the recall questions, and then on the right-hand side, you have the application and the comprehension questions, which basically enables us to test if whatever a student learned during class, is that student able to apply it? So even if a student opens the book, he won't get the application part of it there. He cannot get it. So that starts there. And then in addition, we have trained our lecturers, okay, to be able to set questions in a manner which will enable the students to think rather than to recall what he had been taught. Because I tell you what, that is the problem that we face right now in this part of the world. There is this technology that is coming in called artificial intelligence, or AI.
Yes.
AI, and I was discussing with some people the other day over the weekend, that AI is a very good, method that is coming out, to save, humanity, because it is going to simulate how a human being thinks, and then the robot created out of that is able to now do things the human way, and therefore the human being is just going to sit back and watch things being done for him. But who is going to benefit from that? Of course, not us in this part of the world. We are not going to benefit immediately because we are not going to create the artificial intelligence machines. Those are going to be created out there, and then they are going to be brought here. Yeah. So in terms of us, it will be a question of we are using the artificial intelligence machines rather than creating them. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to take our students to the next level, to be able to think so that they can create these machines or help in the process of creating these machines. And the thinking process starts right from the teaching. Yes. And then it goes to the examination. So that you examine somebody, you examine the student on how well is he able to apply the knowledge that he has learned during class. Then that is the second one. Number three, we also have the online systems themselves for examination. Okay, the online systems for examination are programmed such that they are able to create an environment to monitor the way a student is behaving at the time when the student is taking the exams. We call it a proctoring process. Okay, so the proctoring process ensures that the computer is able to monitor. For example, when I'm doing the exam here, it is checking me that I'm actually doing the exams I'm writing. Okay.
You do that?
Yes, we do that through the remote means. Now, in case I'm waking up, to go and check something else, or even if I'm turning my head that way, that machine is able to take those photographs, and then the photographs are then sent to the server, and the invigilators are able to tell that that student is doing something. If he's doing that thing so often and then he comes back and writes, then obviously he's looking at some material there. Yes. Okay, because we can see the students through the technology that we have, the online examination. And
does this happen across all the programs that you have?
Yes, we do this across all the programs.
That's quite expensive, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, I think it is the way it is being done, because not all the exams take place at the same time. Okay, we do a number of steps in doing the exams, but even if they take place at the same time, we always make sure that we mix up the students who are doing various exams. For example, somebody doing management and leadership could be sitting close to somebody who is doing business administration, somebody who is doing a different exams. So you're monitoring different exams at the same time, and therefore the cost is leveraged in terms of the number that you are able to look at.
Okay. Yes. And me being an employer, what assurances can you give me as a university that this student learned the whole course virtually, while this one did it through the face-to-face education? How do you come to a level playing field that these are two legitimate degrees?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And I think the best way to look at that question is where the world is heading now. Because, and Kenya in particular, there is the new system of education which has been introduced in this country that is called the CBDC system. Yes. Okay? Yeah. Now, the competency-based curriculum, as it is known, or CBDC, is one which is trying to give the students the opportunity to get more involved in the learning process rather than being taught. So the system works in such a way that the lecturers and the teachers engage the students. So the students do more of the learning practically rather than being taught theoretically. Concepts are introduced in the normal manner. Then after that, the students now get interactive involvement in the learning process. And that is where this system is very, very important. Because when you involve students in the learning process, then they pick up and they are able to simulate the learning process, and they are able to learn more through the practical means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking at the education system in Kenya and in many African countries and perhaps the world, looking at the play groups when the kid is around 3, 4, 5 years, to the primary school, the high school, we have socialization, we have play groups, we also have groups discussions. But when we come to online, I'm just learning, alone in the house with my laptop. How do you ensure that there is that socialization? Because at the end of the day, if I'm in a group, a discussion group, I'm able to gain more than when I'm learning alone.
Yeah, that area has been a pretty tricky area. Although there are quite a number of ways that we as a university have managed to ensure that our students, despite being physically absent from the universities, that they still continue, with that element of socialization, albeit not to the level where an individual would like to do so. One of the ways is we advise the students to create an environment, and we simulate this by coming up with models of the environments, learning environments, which are conducive, to similar to what we have physically in the universities. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Number two, we also have the psychosocial, support to students, when they need it. In this way, we are able to reach out to students through the counselors, mm-hmm. through the lecturers, mm-hmm. okay, because we have contact tracing of our students and we have their numbers and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So they are able to, we are able to actually talk to our students. In case a student needs a particular issue or attention in a particular issue, then we talk to the student directly. We have numbers where they can call us. We also have, counselors, a tracing system where our, administrators in the schools get in touch with the students and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And they know exactly what is the problem with the students. Mm-hmm. Plus, we also have our student leaders, okay, the student council of the university, which is playing a very, very important role in connecting the students and the management of the university. Mm-hmm. They also tell us that our students, and they are in this, what you call social, media platforms like WhatsApp groups and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And these WhatsApp groups, students share, mm-hmm. Whatever they're feeling, whatever they're going through, their experiences and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And then through the student leaders, these ones measures to try and make sure that the situation doesn't affect the students that badly. The area which has suffered quite a bit is because of lack of physical interaction. The socialization has been in terms of students being able to meet and interact face to face, either through sports or through other activities, other social activities. This has suffered. But what we have done is we have created video clips which we send to our students, basically to engage them, okay, so that they can see their fellow students doing certain activities rather than just sitting out there. But of course, it is not easy because you cannot replace that physical interaction. By interaction through the social, media and other media, exactly. Yeah.
And you seem to have quite a control in terms of the COVID-19 management in your school, and these lessons that you've learned, the management because of the COVID-19, and what you have had to change because of COVID-19 in terms of how you do things in your school. Are you passing this knowledge to the students, being a management university?
Yes. Like you said rightly, COVID-19 has been a serious blot in the face of the whole world, Kenya in particular, and universities and other learning institutions. And a lot of experience has been, gained as a result of this. There are both positive effects and, negative effects. But either positive, whether positive or negative, it is a very, very, good learning platform that we have gone through. And in the process, we have gained a lot of knowledge because we have tackled a lot of things. We have managed to, continue teaching our students regardless of the pandemic. We have continued examining our students, like I've said, regardless of the pandemic. And, life continues. So the WHO and the Ministry of Health protocols have come in handy. And these are what have actually enabled us to continue and had very, very minimal infections. Because we have our students who are staying in the hostels and they're interacting with each other. And we haven't had cases of infections amongst our resident students, fortunately. Okay.
Actually, that was the next question. How have you been able to manage now the disease? Because at the end of the day, you still are having face-to-face learning.
Yes.
And you haven't recorded any case whatsoever, teachers and students as well?
Exactly. I would say this is the grace of God that we haven't had this, because much as we are observing the WHO protocols, the Ministry of Health protocols of sanitizing, wearing masks, keeping social distance, and so on and so forth. And we have all those regulated in the university, implemented in the university. But, sometimes I walk around the university and I find there are students who are not, wearing the masks. And I tell them, just through, interaction and, teaching, we educate them. We tell them it is for your own good and also for the good of others, that you need to be wearing these masks, that you need to keep the social distancing and the WHO protocols and so on and so forth. But importantly, we have done that in a very, very formal way. First of all, we have created regulations and rules that stop anybody who is not donning a mask, who is not wearing a mask, from entering the university. And we keep checking this at every strategic point within the university to ensure that people are observing the WHO protocols. We have also put on hand washing places in the university at strategic points, at the entrance, and various places within our two campuses, both here in Nairobi and in Kisaju or in Kajiado. And we ensure that water is available. We ensure that soap is available. We ensure that we have sanitizing facilities which are also placed in strategic points at the entrance to the classrooms, entrance to the auditorium, on all those public places, and so on and so forth. And the classrooms are clearly marked. Where the chair is supposed to be, where you're not supposed to sit. So that social distancing concept is being practiced practically in our university. But now, in terms of passing that knowledge, to our students and even for the future generation, we are involved in research activities. For example, the impact of COVID-19 in the education, in the country, and so on and so forth. What are the lessons learned? What are the, the effects, and so on and so forth. So we are doing a lot of research in the area of COVID-19 in relation to other variables. For example, leadership in terms, what can the leadership do? For example, what should the leadership in a situation where this kind of situation manifests in a different way in the future? What should the leadership do so that they prepare themselves? So we do what I would refer to as scenario planning, by looking at taking different scenarios and doing some simulations and coming up with questions and answers as to if it manifests in this particular way, then these are the answers, these are what should be done, and so on and so forth. And then we end up publishing this. Before publishing, though, we disseminate them, and in conferences, we have had conferences. For example, last year, I think in October or so, we had an international conference which was held in conjunction with some of our partners in Japan, and we had over 500 people attend the conference. This was a virtual conference, of course, and it was a very, very important conference that was attended by people from all over the world. We had people from the US, we had people from the UK, people from Japan, as I've said, Africa, and all countries. Australia was represented. So through those kind of media, we end up disseminating the knowledge that we have gathered and researched on, and the findings, so that we can also help our students learn, and not just our students, but the world at large.
So are you also having, you've mentioned some countries and perhaps partners. What are some of the partners that you are working with, and especially when it comes to exam management, to ensure that, or are you borrowing from other models from other countries to ensure that, of course, there's a lot of integrity when it comes to examinations?
Yes. We have partnerships across the globe. Like I mentioned, we have very strong partnerships in Japan. A number of Japan universities. We have the Queen University in Japan.
You have also some of their programs as well?
Yes. We have some of their programs. We also have expertise in terms of lecturers. And we have exchange programs, with our partners. I want to mention specifically Japan because it has been very, very strong. We have exchange programs where our students visit those Japanese universities and learn what is going on in their own specific disciplines, but in Japan. And then we also have Japanese students come to visit Kenya and our university, and they learn. And we also have the lecturers who teach in those Japanese universities also come to teach here in our university, and also sort of partner with us in the area of research and so on and so forth. So in terms of teaching and examination, we have very, very strong partnerships worldwide. And even in terms of the examination system that we use, we have borrowed quite a bit from what is happening in the outside world. Because the outside world, Japan, the US, and the UK, they have had these systems going on for a very long time. For us, it only came to fore mainly when we were struck by this COVID-19 surprise. But we had to go out there. But for us, it was fortunate that we already had this strong partnership, and therefore there was no lull in between the time of the COVID-19 striking and us implementing the new systems.
And you also mentioned something, although in passing, the CBC. We haven't gotten to the university. We've just started it a couple of years ago, and it has been met with both praise and criticism in equal measure. What do you think of it, and do you think the universities are ready to welcome it? Because we haven't gotten to the university level when it comes to CBC.
Yes, two things. I want to say at the onset that CBC is a very good system, and because, like I said earlier, it's going to be a game changer in this country. In this country, we have been the students have been learning they have been learning what I would call the recall sort of process, where they acquire knowledge, but then they have been very, very weak in terms of applying that knowledge. And that is where CBC is coming in to bridge that gap. Because in CBC, like I said earlier, the students are going to be directly involved in the learning process. And so that the student becomes part of the learning process, part of the teaching, rather than sitting on the other side of the blackboard. What has been happening is lecturers have been sitting on one side of the blackboard and students sitting on the other side of the blackboard. With CBC, they are all going to sit together. And the students are going to be fully engaged, so that when it comes to doing the practical aspect of whatever it is that they're learning, and that is, they'll be fully engaged in that particular area. Now, the government has come up with, specific areas where, there are going to be changes in the curriculum at the onset. Okay, and I think agriculture is one of them, creative arts is another, and there are several other areas that have been documented. So in terms of preparedness of the universities and whether the universities will accept this or not, I want to say that the universities, as I said earlier, are regulated by the Commission for University Education, the government through the Commission for University Education, and the role of the Commission is to accredit university programs. Before the Commission accredits university programs, they must make sure that the programs meet certain criteria and certain guidelines and standards which they have created. And so among the guidelines and standards that are going to, that CUE, as it is known, is going to look at is how has CBC been infused or been fused into the standards and guidelines. So first of all, the standards and guidelines must be changed so that university can say that, okay, my program or my particular curriculum needs to meet a specific standard within the Commission for University Education Standards and Guidelines. So once that is done, then universities can then start now revising their current programs or creating new programs where the current programs do not meet the criteria required for curriculum-based for CBC. Okay, now the universities have no choice because that the country is going. So the universities, since they have to meet the standards and guidelines that are set by the government, then they have no choice. Now, there's some time difference between the time it is implemented in the primary school and then it is implemented in the high school, in the secondary school, before it comes to the university. And that timeline is actually, it is controlled by the government, because the government has set up a specific agency that is dealing with this particular system implementation. So it is those timelines that we shall go by. However, because the primary, I think it is already in grade 5 in primary, and by next year it is going to the next grade, okay, which it is going to take about 3 years, okay. So the challenge for the universities now, and of course the government must come in very, very fast, is to make sure that the timing is in tandem with the process that has already been started, so that it doesn't come to the universities very late to realize that they needed to have trained their staff, for example. They needed to have started teaching the CBC based system, okay, when it is too late. So it is the government to really ring that bell. As far as the universities are concerned, we are prepared. For example, at MUA, we are offering Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Education Arts, okay, and we have education students that we teach. These education students will need to be imparted with the knowledge about CBC, okay, and so we wait for the government to come up with a curriculum. Although university education is more or less, teaching is more or less liberalized, we kind of, look at the market, what the market requires, and then we create programs, we develop programs according to the market demand. But then these programs have to be accredited or approved by the Commission for University Education. And that is where, them coming in terms of education now is very, very important.
Indeed. Prof, you bear me witness that the COVID-19 pandemic is not the only challenge that has affected or will affect the education sector as we are. So as we continue to manage it, what are some of the interventions perhaps that can be picked by government and other stakeholders to ensure that we continue learning and ensuring that there is integrity in the education process despite the challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic? Thank
you very much for the question. I think it's a very broad question indeed, and there are many, many things that come into mind. One, we need to be very, very open and anticipatory in the way we think about the future. Necessarily, we need to realize that the world in which we're living, the only thing that is constant in this world is change. And because change is constant, we need to anticipate that when change comes, in what manner will it come, when will it come, and how are we prepared to live within the context of that change. And that is very important. And that is where I earlier mentioned about scenario planning. Scenario planning is a process where you anticipate situations through simulation process. And then you kind of test different, alternatives. If it manifests this way, then how will I react, and what should I do, and so on and so forth. So that is what really we need to do, both at the government level, but also at the players level. Because, for example, we are the players in the education system. So we need to be looking at where is the world moving towards. Unfortunately, in this part of the world, we are looking at a lot of times things that have already been done in the other part of the world. So basically, through scenario planning, we are able to create situations that are possible to manifest in the future. Even if it is not a pandemic, it could be some kind of other different epidemic. It could be a war situation where people are not able to, to do their things normally and so on. And we are alive to what is happening in other countries. For example, live with us now is what is happening in Afghanistan, where the Taliban has taken over.
Yes.
And therefore, they have created a lot of confusion and uncertainty in terms of what has been going on in that country. I'm not in any way suggesting that that should happen in our country.
Yes.
But we need to be prepared for the eventuality, because we need to be assured that we are going to live our life the way we have planned to live it. And therefore, planning becomes very important. Anticipating different situations, coming up with alternatives of how we can, address those different situations, and then basically documenting and keep on retesting and testing. Like I said, change is the only thing that is constant, and therefore we need to be prepared, to manage that change when it happens.
Indeed, and away from the lessons, let's go back to infrastructure at MUA. What have you been able to change? Because at the end of the day, for the face-to-face learners, we have to keep the social distance, of course, the social distancing as well in other places. Have you had to readjust? We've seen some of the schools, high schools, have to make makeshift tents for perhaps some lessons or some stores or something, so as to ensure that there is social distancing. Have you experienced the same?
Yes. Now, in terms of infrastructure, because COVID-19 has sort of chased students, most students, away from the physical environment within the campuses. That physical environment has been left more or less underutilized, so to speak. So we have a lot of room. In terms of the few students who are there, who are coming to learn face-to-face, they have adequate room, and we can arrange, the learning, environment in a very, very conducive way in order to observe the social distancing. And but now the most impact has been in terms of providing online learning to our students. And this has caused us to have additional infrastructure in terms of computers, hardware, in terms of also software, also in terms of additional computer servers, because as we now teach our students through online learning, the shift now goes towards reliability and availability in technology. And this means that what we had before COVID-19 struck could not be enough. So we've had to invest in additional laptops, additional desktops, additional servers, additional internet infrastructure, network cabling, and also adding a little bit more bundles, to our system.
And how has that not narrowed down to the fees? Because you earlier alluded to the fact that you haven't increased any fees as well.
Yes, like I said earlier on, we've had to do a lot of cost cutting. And one of the advantages of student learning outside is that now the services that we normally provided for the students or in the physical environment are no longer being provided. Some of them, not all of them.
Yes.
And we have saved in that specific area. And then number two, we have also negotiated packages with service providers. For example, when I talk about laptops, when I talk about desktops and servers, we have negotiated volume purchase through volume purchase agreements with our service providers, like technology providers like Computer for Schools Kenya, who are giving us and our students, incidentally, and our students laptops at very, very subsidized rates, way much lower than market rates. So in that process, we are actually we have actually bought this hardware, we have installed the software, we have created a conducive learning environment for our students, a cost which is way cheaper than the market cost would be. And therefore, we did not need to increase our student fees.
Of course, you've done quite something to ensure that at least the e-learning continues and continues well. Final remarks as we wind up.
Yes, thank you very much. The e-learning is first of all, let me say that the e-learning is the way to go. And it is happening in all parts of the world. And, Kenya and our university specifically should not be the ones to be left behind. And we want to encourage, students to take up online learning systems. The Commission for University Education, the regulator that accredits universities and programs, already has implemented the standards for e-learning. Okay, and this means that e-learning has now become an official mode of learning in the country and in the universities. So I want to ask the students and anybody who is interested in doing any course to embrace the e-learning process. Because in a different way, it is actually way cheaper. When students visit the campuses physically, there's quite a bit to spend in terms of accommodation, in terms of transport, in terms of time spent in traffic jams and so on when they are commuting back and forth from the offices, from their homes, to the university. So e-learning is a very, very effective way and importantly, very cost-effective way of learning. And also in terms of the future, we are going where the learning is going to be it's already student-centered, okay, as we speak, but it is going to be more enhanced with the introduction of the CBDC system, competency-based, curriculum-based system. So as that takes effect, it is essential that students themselves get more absorbed and more involved in the learning process themselves rather than waiting to be taught and then going down to do research after they have been taught. And this is where e-learning has taken us. Unfortunately, e-learning comes up with the requirements of in terms of technology. It requires that a student has a laptop or an Android phone or say equivalent, which can be able to access the learning software and also display and so on and so forth. It also requires internet. Fortunately for our university and most universities, they've actually negotiated with the service providers, internet service providers, which provide students with affordable bundles way below market rates, as long as it is being used for education purposes. Yes. So that is already happening, and we are very thankful to the service providers for that kind gesture. I would encourage them to continue. And there's the other side, which is the hardware itself, which I said earlier, we have already negotiated, particularly for our students, with the computer hardware providers like laptops and so on and so forth, to be able to give our students, and we give our students on a sort of a loaned basis, okay? We guarantee our students, so they are supplied in the name of the universities, then the students get them, and then they pay them, slowly. They don't have to put a bill up front. So there are so many disadvantages of e-learning as opposed to the physical, learning. Really? So the future is in e-learning. I would encourage people to embrace e-learning, the students, the parents alike, and everybody else who is interested in education, because that is where the future is going, and we stand to get more advantages and benefits through e-learning compared to the face-to-face learning.
Thank you so much. I couldn't have put it much better. Professor Washington Okeyo, who is the Vice Chancellor of the Management University of Africa, and we were looking at e-learning, and to be more specific when it comes to offering of examination and ensuring there is integrity in those examinations. E-learning is the way to go. We have to embrace it, and especially now that we have COVID-19 pandemic, and we do not even know how or what other challenges may come in future. Well, thank you, Professor, for that. And of course, we are continuing with News Check on the next hour. In the next couple of minutes, we will be looking at creating hope for the disadvantaged or the vulnerable groups in the country. What is the situation? And especially now that we have COVID-19, one thing I know is that Kenyans have a big heart. And my next guest has a bigger heart. Keep it KBC. We'll be right back.